Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Fill in the Blank, where we fill you in on everything business and tech. I'm Hassan, and today I'm joined by Naima Ahmed. Welcome to the show, Naima.
Thank you, Hassan. It's a pleasure.
All right, so Naima is a legal expert, and it would be great if you can introduce yourself to our audience.
Sure. So I am a corporate and commercial lawyer, been practicing for the last 10 plus years, and right now consulting. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. So the theme of today is why do brands need to build legal acumen, and especially digital brands, right?
Right.
Naima, let's just start off by asking, what is it that startups or businesses need to be aware of when it comes to legal matters when they're launching or just starting off?
Right. So some of the key elements that any business, especially a tech startup,
Yeah.
needs to be privy to is firstly their IP rights,
All
right?
right.
They need to register their trademarks,
All right.
get them patented or copyrighted, because most of their trade secrets are, of course, important and confidential. And they need to be, in order to avoid any future
Yeah.
infringement lawsuits or claims,
Uh-huh.
they need to be covered by getting your intellectual property
All right.
registered. The second important one that's a follow-up to this is a confidentiality agreement, right?
Alright.
Now, so जिसको हम NDA कहते हैं, non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah.
Followed by, of course, if it's a software company, then, of course, there are certain licensing agreements, software license agreements that need to be contracted, whether it's with a third-party vendor, whether
Alright.
it's with a supplier. Followed up by some of the most important regulatory compliance related issues. Of course, we have the SECP and we have the State Bank of Pakistan governing this landscape through their circulars.
Yeah.
And of course, this is important. For example, if you're a fintech or a company that is trying to scale up into financial services, then you will need something called an NBFC and non-banking finance, license. So these are just some of the examples that you need to start and honing, because a legal acumen and a legal strategy is very important from the get-go.
All right.
And of course, there will be some cyber breaches, data privacy issues that we can touch upon later.
Sure. So when you list them down, they sound a lot, and like for a layman can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
What can go wrong if businesses don't incorporate that from the get-go and they delay getting a legal team or legal assistance?
Right. So I always say, at least in my experience till date, I've seen that, you need to see a legal person just like a commercial navigator.
All right.
So it's a legal navigator with a commercial lens. And that sort of just adds value. This is how you bring value to the business, right? And that sort of hones your sustainable pathway for businesses eventually when they're scaling up.
All right.
So if you don't have that, if you don't have a legal strategy in place, which should be incorporated or integrated in your business strategy, then of course you can face multitude of infringement claims, starting from data privacy breaches to cyber breaches, right? And then IP infringement breaches. Somebody just, leaves you and starts in another brand with a similar name, then you will lose your competitive edge. So these are all very business commercial solutions, but with a legal lens.
All right. Makes sense. Interesting. So you mentioned privacy, which I feel is very important, right? So what should businesses be aware of to protect their users' privacy and eventually be compliant with wherever they're operating?
Right. So, in Pakistan, as we all know, there's no comprehensive data protection legislation, right? We just have the PECA, which is the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, followed up by sporadic, ordinances on cyber crimes whenever there is a breach. But if we look at international best practices, that's where especially from a tech-specific, software licensing, a business-specific startups
Yeah.
who are looking to see this, it's very important to have your privacy policy drafted really well.
All right.
And have it as transparent as possible.
Makes
Make
sense.
it
Makes sense.
so transparent that your user agrees to all the terms, right? So normally hota hai कि website पे दी होती है privacy policy. And interestingly, so I was looking at an international company as well. They even had a limited liability inserted into it, and they had capped it.
All right.
You know, so I mean, this is where legal lawyer or a legal perspective will come in.
All right.
So, of course, we have in the EU GDPR, and then they went into having data protection. So, you just draw out, because in Pakistan, there is no template for this, right?
All right.
We are still trying to come up with a law, trying to come up with IT policy. And another thing is that tech companies can also adopt or integrate these things in their algorithms per se, right? Make the data, third-party data, anonymized.
Okay.
So when you make it anonymized, you know, you can agree to terms better.
Yeah.
The subjects which will be your end clients, be it B2B or B2C, they will have transparent, clear knowledge right out there in terms of your terms of services, TNCs, and privacy policy.
All right.
So I think this is critical.
Makes sense. And from what I am understanding is that a lot of the work being done right now is very reactive. Yani we're not taking preemptive measures, and legal is not being considered by business leaders early on in their journey. It's only when things get out of control, or when you need, let's say, a litigation or something, that is when you have your first interaction with lawyers, right?
Yes.
So what is the best mix for a business between having an in-house legal team versus an external legal counsel?
So, you know, normally if you see the standard operating model, most of the companies and MNCs have a legal department, they have a legal in-house team. But because startups are starting off from a very novice place, right? They don't have not even I won't just say acumen, but they don't feel the need to have a legal in-house counsel, even though, like I said earlier, it's so important to integrate that into your business strategy. Because hota ye hai ki if your master service agreement, which will essentially have all of your confidentiality, payment terms, scope terms, you know, dispute resolution clauses and termination. For example, a partner needs to exit, you need to pay out. All of this, an external counsel might be able to give you a draft, and you can, but you need to keep on updating it. You need to keep on building your and the other party's capacity. That can only happen when you have a in-house counsel. All right. So not only will they build your capacity, they will also be building their own, right? So it's a partnering that you do. Yeah, something that I've seen in practice, for example, a very recent example was an IT-based company not having proper employment contracts, right? Like they wanted somebody who can just better draft them or hone them. And even though they were looking for some kind of an arrangement, but these are the kind of things, right? It could be HR matters, it could be labor matters, and of course employment matters are really important, especially when you're scaling up, going from 10 to 200 employees. Right. So this is something that a legal navigator or a legal counsel will be able to guide you. All right.
Makes sense. All right, so I think, this covers the initial part of things very comprehensively. What I've seen, or where I've seen legal teams get involved, is closer to an exit, when either a startup is getting acquired or they're listing for an IPO. So can you tell us about the later half of the journey and how legal comes in the final days of a startup?
Right. So, I mean, of course, you mentioned the need for, because normally hota ye hai every Section 42 company, if you register or are a limited company, you need to have an external legal advisor as well. So, of course, this is where your internal counsel and external, of course, hand in hand work, and then, for example, an acquire or a merger is happening, and it's a huge transaction, right? There are billions or millions of dollars involved, and it's not an easy thing. So of course, this is where the legal counsel's job or legal need in-house will come more.
Yeah.
And then you'll need to expand, you can't suddenly just say ki acha ab hame
Exactly.
So all I'm saying is that you scale up accordingly. And of course with M&A and with it's a certain you need to look at anti-competitive practices.
Exactly.
You need to file certain requisitions and processes in Competition Commission of Pakistan, or maybe you will need to take another license, or maybe process some documentation which nobody in-house will know of.
All right, that makes sense. So cool. I think we've had a great discussion so far. Just summing up, what piece of advice would you give entrepreneurs or businesses starting up or early in their tenure, given the current socio-economic situation? In terms from a legal perspective, what is your top advice for businesses?
Yeah, I guess just have a good mentoring and good advisory board to start up with. So there could be a commercial navigator or a legal navigator as well. Normally the board of governance or the board of trustees for any tech startup has both expertise in the board advising you. So my first advice would definitely be have the proper mentoring and coaching, and then built up accordingly.
All right. So that was super informative. Thank you, Naima, for being a part of our show today, and thank you for filling us all in on it.
Thanks for having me, Hassan.